Hey there, this is the Resistor Vic podcast. I'm here to get folks thinking about politics as something that's really about regular people like you and me, and to realize that together we can make a difference.
Mike, your home for progressive news issues and candidates here in Colorado. Today I'm with Mateo Montoya Callis, running for sheriff for El Paso County. Mateo, go ahead, introduce yourself and let the folks know why you're running.
All right, Big Mike. Well, it's great meeting you officially on the phone right now. So Mateo Montoya Callis, running for the Democratic office of sheriff in El Paso County. A lot of the big reason why I'm running is because we need some concepts that are actually simple, that make sense, and that are proactive within the law enforcement community. So we have a lot of ideologies of us versus them. Who is us? Who is them? We're all together. And I think if we start looking at law enforcement from a standpoint of investing in our community, we're probably going to get a better ROI, return on investment. So that's one of the big reasons is what I have seen over the last 22 years of my career, which will be coming up in August. So I've been doing it for 20 years as a peace officer, is that what we do is we don't address the real issue. So we'll have a lot of pushback with teaching people state law, which is very strange. It's like playing a sport. If you don't teach the kids how to play the sport, they might not know how to play the game. If we don't teach our citizens state law, they might violate each other's rights. And if they do, then we as the enforcers of those laws get bogged down with more work. So let's take a progressive, positive approach. And it cuts down through party lines. It goes straight down to what the real root of the cause is, which is we need to look at each other as somebody and something to invest in. So that's one of my big reasons is I think we have a good team. I think we have a positive outlook. And I know that, big picture, long term, you can't go wrong with education. You just can't. So that's kind of my thing.
I love it. Let's start with El Paso County. Obviously, that includes Colorado Springs. It's one of the reddest metro areas in the country.
Right.
The current sheriff, I assume, is Republican.
Yes. Yep. That is.
So what are your chances? Especially, it seems like law enforcement elections tend to lean right. So what made you get in the race? And what do you think your role would be in moving El Paso County to the left?
Well, so I'm gonna go straight down the middle right now, and I'm gonna address it. So on patrol, I've never gone on a call for service ever where Adam 5-3, go ahead, go and show me in contact with one Democrat, go and show me in contact with one Republican. I've never done that. 20 years of law enforcement, I've never done it. The role of the sheriff's office, and I think this is the one thing, is that, it does lean a lot of times ideology wise, right versus left, is you have to understand that we don't have the ability on a call for service or law enforcing laws to take that into consideration. So I think progressive mindset and progressive mentality, they're not going to look at the R or the D. They're going to think about the program that we're bringing. And the program that we're bringing is positive. It's community oriented. It's focused on really lowering crime and lowering victimization through education, which is what we want, right?
Right.
We want one or two less victims per week, per month, per day would be awesome. And we could do that, with that concept. So as far as me helping turn, I think what it is it goes back to that initial statement. We have to stop looking at it, us versus them. And we got to look at reinvesting back into our community. That starts with our kids. That starts with the people that do violate and commit a crime. What are they learning when they're in the jail? What are they learning when they're in prison? If they're not learning anything and they're getting out and they're worse off, that's not a good place to be. So my goal, my focus, my team's focus, we're going to be really pushing hard on, so you're going to get out of custody. How are you going to not reoffend? How are you going to help our community? How are you going to better yourself? And how can we, as the government entity, as the head law enforcement officer and the lead of an entire county, how are we going to put you in a better position to better serve our community, to better serve our citizens, each business that's within the county, and how does that help the state of Colorado overall? It's going to help, and it's going to be proactive. So that's how I'm going to do it. Is we're going to focus straight on what it is. It's not right. It's not left. It is literally reinvesting back into each citizen and back into each person we come in contact with.
Right. So I guess my argument there is typically on the right, they have a focus on punishment, and whereas the left, we want to prevent and we want to invest so that the crimes don't happen in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely.
And especially when we're thinking about police officers, sheriff's officers, or sheriff deputies, I should say. A lot of them tend to be more right wing. Do you have buy-in from the rank and file on that trajectory that you plan on taking?
So I do. One of the big things that I really, really will push is we have a narrative that, we need to make sure they pay for what they've done, just in general, right? When it comes to law enforcement, as it should be. If you commit the crime, you should be able to do the time. People that are in the profession a lot longer, what you see is a lot of recidivism, and you see the rates of recidivism going at a higher level. And the longer that they stay in the system, or the longer that they're exposed to the system, you get 3 squares a day, you get a bunk, you get a mat, you get a place to stay, you sleep. And sometimes that heals you. Here's the issue that you run into a lot. And this is one of the things that I've seen through my 20 years is it doesn't matter if it's jail, doesn't matter if it's courts, doesn't matter if it's patrol. When we do the criminal history and we see a person that's been convicted 1 time, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 times, what are they learning? And how is that progressively keeping them out? And how is that helping the citizens? How is that helping the community? So the punishment doesn't really help just throwing them in a box and saying, I'm gonna lock you away and put you away. So we're not as tough on crime when we just throw people away. You have to do the preventative marks. You have to go on the front end. And so the buy-in from the people that have been in the profession for a lot longer, there's twofold. Yes, they have to pay, but what are we doing to get a return on that investment? The ones that are progressive, the ones that have intelligence based on, experience and knowledge, they know that there's a problem. I'm just finally articulating what the problem is. And the problem is that we have to start teaching people and providing resources for them when they get out so they don't reoffend. Now, there are some people that need to go to jail and prison. We understand that. We also understand, though, that if we could prevent it, the good people that are, really in the work, that are doing the work, it's not just, we need to grab them, throw them in the jail. It's like, how do we stop this? So positively speaking, yes, there are people that we could do this because they go to college, they get their degrees, they get more intelligence, they get wisdom. Why aren't we doing that for everybody?
I love to hear it. Yeah. And I had Michael Doherty running for Attorney General on 2 weeks ago, and we discussed that very topic. It seems like, recidivism rates in America are embarrassing compared to other, advanced countries. So what is the disconnect there? Why are we, we have more people in prison than China, and they have 1.2 billion people.
Right.
So what is it? Where is that disconnect happening? Is there no communication between the penal system and the, labor system to get these people, on a trajectory to be, functioning, contributing members of society? What's the disconnect?
Well, so my experience. So obviously, with my experience, what I have seen is the disconnect comes in multiple ways. So I'll give you an example. So on a call for service for patrol, if I show up and there's no crime, but there was stress, like there was a situation, and I just leave, this person might have a mental health issue, right? They might require treatment. They might need to talk to somebody. But as a patrolman, do you have the time? So what they used to do is they used to say, oh, we don't have time. We don't have time for the resource. what they found is that adding mental health professionals within those calls for service, now what we have is we have that avenue by providing that person or that family or that group with a resource actively. So now I show up on that call for service and I'm like, okay, there's no crime. Clearly there's a problem, but it's not criminal. Would you guys like to talk to somebody to get help? Because I have a mental health unit, a Mary unit is what we call it in Arapaho, available. I could offer that. And then that person says, yes, I'll take that. So now what ends up happening, now we have a resource. So this goes back to back in the day when I first started, we didn't have that. And so it takes that progressive mindset. When they're coming out of jail now, do we offer that? When they get out of the prison system, do we offer that? Do we have halfway houses that aren't attached to paperwork? So for instance, here's an example. Within the different counties, you'll have halfway houses that people will get parole or probation to, like they have a residence and the judge will grant them the opportunity to stay out of jail, get a job, progressively work out of their prison or jail sentence, right? Do we have something in between there? No, we don't. And that's where we got to ask the community for help. And we got to make sure as the lead law enforcement officers within our respective counties, can you guys help us? Because it comes down to funding. It comes down to money. Who's paying for this? Who's paying for that? You know, do we have nonprofits that are able to do that? Do we have churches, organizations? It doesn't matter where it comes from to a degree. However, it does matter that we're having those things available. So now it comes back to, are we communicating that we need help? We need help as law enforcement professionals. We need help as community members. We need help within leadership to have the humility to step out and say, you know what? I have X amount of people that cost X amount of dollars while they're housed. However, they're phasing out. They're done with their probation in 2 weeks. They need a place to stay that's stable. Can the community help? Can the churches help? Can the organizations out there help? If we open those doors of opportunity of communication and they're able to transfer, I guess you could say, the help of the community to another community member, now we're working together as a team. And that's what this is all about, right? It's teamwork. It's got to be team oriented. You know, there's that saying that it takes an entire village to raise a child. Well, what happens when the child goes wrong, gets on drugs, has a developmental issue within their life, and then has PTSD? Now what? Now we just throw them away? No, actually, we can't look at it that way. We can't look at people's throwaways. So it's going to take a lot of humility. It's going to take a lot of positivity, and it's going to take a lot of work from everybody that's going to be vested in trying to make El Paso County and the state of Colorado one of the leaders in this concept. So I know we can do it. We've got good leadership and we got good team members out that got to connect them. So that's where the disconnect I've seen.
Got it. And yeah, staying positive, obviously very important. And I've seen you've done some events with progressive vets and you've done some events with friend of the show, Joe Regan.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about where you are politically? Do you consider yourself a progressive?
I would say progressive, definitely. The concept, and I've been this way since I was a kid. I'm going to say as a young man, I've always been one of those kind of people that I always like to think down the roadway. So they being the person gives you a problem, whatever that problem is, and you're like, okay, just work backwards. So we have the problem. How do we work back to fix it? Well, that takes the forethought of knowing that we could do this on a regular basis and we could move in a positive way progressively towards the solution rather than play the blame game. We can't, we're adults, man. Like we're in charge. We're the ones in charge of this stuff. We can't keep blaming something. We have to think progressively. We have to think positively to the people problems that we're going to run into within just the profession, but also within the overall concept of being an American citizen. If you're committed to being American, then you understand it takes all of us. It's not a one person show, as some people would like to, make it. It takes all of us. It's a team. So.
And as I was saying earlier, progressive is not usually a term we associate with law enforcement. So how did you end up, with your views as a law enforcement officer? What led you down that path?
So I grew up in a real rough neighborhood. A lot of gangs, a lot of drugs, a lot of violence. And there's hundreds of us within my family that have a plethora of different life stories. So there's, you have anywhere from military officials to guys that just got out of prison. And, these are my family members. These are my associates growing up as a kid. And I was fortunate enough that when I was a child, I had some good police officers look out for me in the neighborhood, and they got me into baseball. And, with sports, you learn discipline, you learn some things. And then all of a sudden I find out that they're police officers, peace officers, state certified individuals that are vested in protecting our community. And I thought it was a unique position that they were in. But then I also found, as I continue to progress within my athletic career in college and eventually professional career, that it really just takes the mindset of one or two people that could change the life of hundreds of kids. And they did for me. There's a guy by the name of Bo Calloway. He put together a program called Opportunities for Baseball. He recruited individuals that were within the professions that were required. They taught us skills. We got to college. We got the golden ticket per se, and it gave us opportunities. And so for me, I had a lot of people that looked out for me. I had a lot of people that, when I was going down the wrong road, they would kind of tap me to the right or tap me to the left and be like, hey, think about it this way, do it this way. And so it was a lot of coaching, a lot of good stuff. So that has eventually transitioned to me being, a 20-year vet in law enforcement since 2005, to how can I do that for another kid? How can I encourage him or her into knowing that their issue or their problem that they're going through, be it at school, be it at home, they could get through it if they have the resource. Let me be that resource. So that's going full circle.
Yeah. So you're not only, in favor of these early intervention programs, but you're also a graduate of one per se.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny when I look at it. We had kids by the name of Psycho on the team. We had kids that were, from the Bronx, New York. We had Pittsburgh, Sacramento, Oakland, hood kids. I never thought, that I was, and I've done interviews before. I've never thought that I was a hood kid, but I, by definition, was a neighborhood kid that was around certain things that maybe others didn't see. And, but they didn't treat me that way. They didn't expect me to act that way. In fact, they required that we pushed, and they set a standard that was above the generalized throw away mentality, and we thrived. And like I said, a lot of us got drafted to play professional sports, but all of us got that opportunity to get college. And college presented that opportunity that professionally, I don't think we would have had. Obviously, you have, other things that we were able to steer clear from because of our, I guess you could say, movement and action towards a goal. We had a goal, and they gave us that.
Cool. And were you able to study criminal justice in college, or
no? So I was not a criminal justice major. I was I wanted to play professional baseball. Just straight up. We're going to go straight down the truth. I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. I was really good. I had tryouts to Tampa Bay, Baltimore, Kansas City Royals. I was first team all league, honorable mention all state. When I was playing ball, I was a good ball player. Things didn't quite turn out that way. I was an art major. And then that's kind of a unique situation too, because from there led to my art coming into the profession.
Yeah. And let's talk about that. You've got a book out, I believe.
Yes.
And what was your goal with that? Tell us a little bit about that experience.
All right. So I'm patrolling, and, quite often when I'm, doing the job, I don't have a hard time talking to people, and I don't have a hard time engaging with members of our community. And I happen to see some kids, they reminded me of me, and, I get out the patrol car, I go and hoop it up with them. I'm terrible at basketball, but they don't, really care. I'm bricking the ball and I'm just passing it to them. And, I get a call later from, one of my lieutenants, and he said, hey, I wanted to talk to you about something. And so, on patrol, you want to make sure that you make time for that particular person. So I go and I talk to him, and he's like, hey, I'm thinking about putting together a kid's book. And I'm like, okay. And he says, so I talked to this other deputy who's also an artist, and he said he doesn't have the time, but you might have the time. I said, wait a minute, man, you came to me second. I'm your second choice, and so of course I kind of razzed him a little bit. And so I asked him, I said, well, what is it? And he said, well, it's about horses. Now my horses, okay. And I was like, well, send me a picture of the horse. And so he still teases me to this day. He's like, Mateo, you don't know what a horse looks like? And so he sends me a picture of the horse that he has. And so I come up with some sketches, and then we start working on building the book. As we built it, eventually I got to the point where I had the characters developed. Man, on one of my routine patrols, I was in one of our neighborhoods, and one of our constituents in the neighborhood, she knows me. She rolls up to me and she says, what are you doing, Mateo? And I said, don't flirt with me because I'm going to tell you everything. And she says, Mateo, what do you got? And I said, okay, you asked for it. So I showed her the kids' book. That particular interaction that started from an unwanted party months before turned into the first 1,000 books getting printed for free, giveaways to the kids when we would go to the schools. So essentially me just doing the job within patrol led to 1,000 books. I'm going to show you the book titles if you're okay with that. Just
Absolutely.
okay. So this is the first book right here. I don't know if you can see it. So The Happy Police Horse, and it essentially, covers down on the storyline of this guy, Benelli. So we had Arapahoe County Libraries. We had quite a few individuals. Cherry Creek Country Club was one of the big sponsors. And we had Crooked Window Farms. We had Zoology Foundation. So we had a lot of people invest in this book. So now we're going to schools and we're teaching kids how to read. Now, from there, where that's cool is they're meeting a horse, they're meeting a peace officer, they're meeting volunteers that are educators, doctors. We have all kinds of cool people that are in this program that are helping these kids learn how to read. Now, that book, there's number one, turned into number two, Julie's Wish. All right. And then, of course, now we expand because now we have miniature horses. And so now the therapy horses are going to the schools and going to the hospitals, which they've done in the past, but they're interacting and they're intersecting with children and they're inspiring them to do some stuff. And that, of course, goes to book number 3, where it's a good day for teamwork. All right. So now we start building in there, and it talks about the connection between fire, EMS, and, the normal citizen that's going to call for help, and then how police officers with horses and dogs could help. And then from there, that segued over into our last book, which is What It Takes to Be Brave. And I think, let me show you this. So What It Takes to Be Brave. So under this storyline right here, this particular horse, it was a mama horse and a baby horse, real stories that turned into kids' books. And now we're intersecting with these kids at an early age, and they get the book for free. So my partner doesn't get paid extra. I don't get paid extra. Farmer doesn't get paid extra. It does take care of the horses. It does take care of the books. So if you purchase a book, it goes right back into the program. And so we're assisting a lot of young kids, and they're walking away with, I hope, what's an amazing experience. And they do say they like it. So they definitely.
Yeah. And where can folks find those books at?
So we don't sell them on the internet per se. What we do is they sell it through the sheriff's office. So if you would go to Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office, obviously there's the link that I'm running for sheriff. So I win. We're bringing this program, period. It's going to happen. And so we'll keep it going in the Arapahoe County area, Denver metro area. We'll bring it to El Paso, but it's through Back the Blue Canine. So if you go Back the Blue Canine, you could type in Arapahoe mounted unit. And then from there, what ends up happening is it'll talk about the kid's book. You buy a book, you're buying a book for yourself, and you're purchasing a book for a kid you'll never meet. So, we make sure that it circles back and it continues going. And it all starts, it's the community that's really helping this program move. So that's what we would be doing. And that's what actively we are doing. So this isn't something that just started with this election. We've been doing this for 6 years now. I believe it started in 2020. And so we're doing the work. We're going to continue to do the work. I win. We're going to make it happen.
I love to see it. Building trust at an early age with law enforcement, I think, is super important. And that is a great lead up to my next question. I'm a leftist. I'm about as far left as you can go without being, a full blown communist. So typically on the left, we have a very complicated relationship, very complicated history with law enforcement. Whether it's the civil rights era, It's, the Chicago police killing Fred Hampton. They leftist organizer in Chicago back in the 60s and 70s. How do you build trust with the left, people who would be your ideological allies in this progressive run, when there's a bit of animosity kind of built into the system that way?
So I can only speak from my personal experience. So I was fortunate enough to play on the professional rugby team, and this is just one example. Okay, one of my good friends didn't need to die. And this instance happened when I was preparing for a Major League Rugby season, where I got an opportunity to yet again do something with my skill set. My friend and I were really, really close, and we would spend time together, and on the field. And we never really, because as working professionals, while also attempting to make the highest level of Major League Rugby, you don't always have the time. But my friend Lindani, Mieni, and we're going to talk about abuse of power, and we're going to talk about overstepping your bounds. I would tackle this guy all the time in practice, and we had to. And I would do everything that I could to make sure he couldn't tackle me because I'm faster than him, right? And when I found out that he was killed during an interaction that could have been handled appropriately, in my mind. So I never want to take that hard, ugly approach. But if I'm there, my friend is still alive. If the guys that I train are there, my friend is still alive. He might have got a ticket, maybe. He might have been handcuffed, maybe. But he would have known who he was dealing with because we would have announced who we were, and we would have educated him, and we would have calmed the situation down using de-escalation techniques. So where I'm going with that is the trust has to come from individuals that are vested in the community and see individual members of the community, not as threats, but as individuals that we can help. Now, I'm very much aware of what I can do with a firearm. So I am not afraid every call for service. And I hope that resonates. I don't need to be a fear of every call for service that I go to unless there is in fact a threat. If I'm the one that is threatening, that's a problem. So the trust issue a lot of times circles back to, who are we putting on the street? Who are these people that are so scared that every call for service that they go to a particular neighborhood or they go to a location, they do not have the physical competence to do the job, nor do they have the rest or mental acuity to really understand that we as people are dealing with people problems. If you don't look at the other person as an equal and you're always stressed, maybe you're fatigued, maybe you're tired, maybe you're not fit that day to show up. And so maybe we should utilize sick time or, a time frame for you to heal. And I think a lot of times with, building the trust, we have to be open. We have to be honest. We have to look at our peace officers as people, and we have to look at our citizens as people. And together, I believe we could build that trust because it takes communication. Everything most of the problems we run into within the job is communication issues, whether they speak a different language, whether they come from a different country. And I can only speak from my personal experience as a professional law enforcement officer. If the person doesn't speak English and you want to speak Spanish, well, I speak Spanish. Okay. I speak a little bit of Russian. I speak a little bit of everything, and I'll do everything that I can, even within those situations that I don't speak well, to communicate peaceably. And so that's where I really believe that we have to put more of a focus on the product that we're putting on the street and the product that we're putting in our jails and the product we're putting in the courts as a peace officer, that they have to be valued to a degree where they are respected and they feel respect. And so they could give that back to the citizen, because you have to show up to work at least your best that day. You cannot, Michael Jordan, I think one of the things that they talked about with him concerning sports is he never wanted to not show up because he always knew somebody was playing against him, but he also knew that somebody paid X amount of dollars to watch him play. So as a peace officer, you have to want to be 100% that day for the people that you're going to protect, help, assist, and hopefully negotiate through very difficult situations. the situation, the best outcome possible. And, I've been on both ends where it's not a win-win situation. Sometimes some calls are hard, and you wear them, and you wear it for your entire career, and it hurts. I've been on the call for service where my friend was the person that was deceased. And I've been on the call for service where, they didn't make it. And I've been on the call for service where I walked the old lady across the street, and I've made sandwiches at a jail. So I've done it all when it comes to that standpoint. And it's not beneath me to see the trust comes from communication, and it comes from openness, honesty, transparency, and a lot less pride and a lot more humility. So.
And what role does training have in that? When we look at American, I think the average police training is 21 weeks.
Right.
If you look at Europe, I think the average is like 3 years of training. So what role does that play where you see in Europe a much lower, police encounter fatality rate? And do you think maybe an associate's degree in criminal justice or something should be required for police officers or sheriff's deputies?
Well, I'm going to say this, okay? Understanding the educational aspects is one thing, but also understanding the competency of the individual and the experience level that they're going to have. So what I found within my training, other individuals, other people through the post academy, via the non-cert or the post academy, the most qualified individuals have some life experience. With that life experience coupled with education and physical fitness, I believe at the academies that I've been associated with, we generally roughly have about 900 plus hours of peace officer standard training, exceeding what Colorado Post requires. I think Colorado Post is mid 500s. We generally try and put a more of a practical look at you're not ready, because you're not. You're just not able to walk into a situation. If I say, okay, there's a domestic violence call, go handle it, you're not ready. You would know what to do unless I teach you. And I really think that training is one of the biggest things, because it's funny, when I was in high school, college, professional rugby, we would watch film the next day after the game, after the match, the meet, for track and field, whatever it was, even college baseball. We would watch and study, and we would learn. And this is one of the professions issues that I find tremendously difficult, is why do we not have that time frame for those officers to recount and recalibrate and figure out ways to do the job better? Not everything's going to be a win. There's going to be some situation where it's going to, oh man, I could have done that a little differently. I could have attacked differently. I could have been more positive. I could have been more, even aggressive in some situations, because sometimes that does help without causing, stress and without causing an issue. And I think that training is the staple of what we are missing and why we have so many tragic situations. If it's a traffic ticket, why is the guy walking away with an extra hole? Why? Why has he been shot? Why have you put yourself in this situation? If it's a violation, where it comes to, could it have been handled differently? I think that if we take a step back and understand we have the technology now to do basic tracking, and if it's going to be a misdemeanor or less, maybe, injuring somebody, including yourself, isn't really what's required. And I think that comes back down to the training and the understanding that, if you've played like at a high level sport, low level sport, mid-level sport, any type of sport, training never hurts. Law enforcement is not a sport. It is a profession. And we have to stop looking at it as training is an option. It is not an option. We have to increase training. We have to look at this as an investment for our officers, for our citizens, and we have to make sure that we take care of our professionals that are out there. And that's one of the big things that I know I am bringing. I am bringing a higher level of training. The people that I'm bringing with me, including those ones that are currently at El Paso, so long as they are on board with more training and more proactive, movement towards taking care of themselves, we're going to bring a better product.
Awesome. And I wanted to take a break from the serious issues. You were a multiple-time champion, I believe, of the how is it said? The international fire and police games.
Yes, World Police and Fire Games.
World Police and Fire Games. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So, for those of you that don't, for many, many years, I've had the goal of becoming an Olympian. When I had the opportunity, I was on the Olympic development team for the USA for bobsled. It was from 2015 through about 19. I was still trying really, really hard. About 20 is when I realized, I was like, these kids are coming off the Olympic team for sprints. They're naturally 210 pounds. I have to eat 6,000 calories a day. My body frame is not going to, hold up. So I transitioned into rugby. Professional rugby was great. I got to see a lot of really, really cool things. Where for me, it really connected was, I think it was 2012. I had just had my son and I won a national championship for track and field. And I ran a respectable time in the 60 meter. And I beat a lot of track and field athletes. I was a baseball player and football player in high school and college. And, I did dabble in track and field in high school and college, but it was never something that I thought. And I was like, wow. Then a team sponsored me, Spira. And then all of a sudden I'm getting help, for running. And so with the World Police and Fire Games, I put my name in the hat to go in. I knew I had to do rounds. And so one of my former coaches, Yvonne Mondesire, she was a Olympian in 72, 76, and 80. She gets me on point. I get in shape. And after, 12 races, I walked away with a silver medal from Ireland. And it was one of the most fulfilled, I guess you could say, experiences that I've had in my athletic career. Because, you go to a different country and they're putting your stats up there. Mateo Montoya Callas, lane 4, won of this medal and of that medal. And, I'm like, these guys know who I am. Like, it was surreal for me. It was the connection, though. For me, the connection that I made with other officers in Europe, that I made with other officers, from all the different countries. I know we had those officers from the Middle East. We had some from Africa. We had some from Australia. We had some from China. We had all these different people. And all of a sudden, I'm trying to beat them and they're trying to beat me. But at the end of the day, we know what our goal is. Our goal is to make the United States better, their respective countries better, and the world a safer place. And so the camaraderie that I got from that was amazing. So that's how it started.
I love it, man. And yeah, I grew up an athlete as well. So I just wanted to touch on that. Awesome. And I wanted to throw this out there. I noticed on your website, you claim a 400 batting average for baseball. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. So
that is impressive.
Yeah, I could hit. I could actually hit really well. And I developed the skill later when I was in probably my sophomore year in high school. I started working hitting left-handed. So right-handed, I had more power. Left-handed, I have power. But it got me some looks with some Major League Baseball teams. So it was fun. I can still hit. My arm's okay. I can still run a little bit. So
awesome. Yeah, my dad's a baseball coach too. So I'm well versed.
That is awesome.
But yeah, let's get into a couple of the political issues that you'll be facing as sheriff. So let's start with ICE and immigration enforcement. Obviously, you're not in control of the state laws in this, but what does, a sheriff's role in immigration enforcement and dealing with ICE look like to you?
So I'm going to go straight to the points. Okay. We need federal law enforcement officers doing the job correctly. And as the way that I look at things, from my standpoint, as a sheriff's candidate and eventually, to be in that position, I have to press this extremely hard. Do it right. Do it efficiently. Do it professionally. Do it respectfully. You don't need to demean somebody because they violated a law in any way. from my standpoint, and I'm going to give you an example that I've encountered. So I pull a vehicle over, doesn't have a plate that's valid as far as the registration. When I pull the plate over, I contact the individual. The individual is a person that was not legally able to drive without a license. And however, they did have a temporary permit. So now they're legal. Okay, so they're from a different country. And now they have a permit that allows them to drive as a resident here in the state of Colorado. They do not have a social security number. They do not have any other documentation. However, the documentation that they have is good enough for me to do a clearance on them. I utilize both their Colorado identification that allows them to drive a vehicle, and then also the document they provided that was similar to a passport. And it comes back that they have a judiciary warrant. Okay, they have a warrant. And so I contact them in a different language and I speak to them and I say to that person, because of the fact that you have this warrant, I do have to arrest you. Now, this is my professional experience. The family member that's in the vehicle said, sir, he just got a call from his attorney. We just got from court. They moved back his court date. That warrant is not accurate. I said, are you sure? And they said, yes. I said, okay. Do you have that attorney's number? And do you have the division for the federal judge that this thing is associated with? Okay. You understand where I'm going. This is an actual thing. So as I'm communicating with this person, they provide me the number. I contact my dispatch. My dispatch does what they can. They call the attorney. They do what they can to eventually get a hold of Arapahoe County Dispatch, and we resolve the issue. The paperwork was accurate. The paperwork was good. It was not taken out of the system. The warrant was not taken out of the system. Now, where I'm going with that is this. The guy was in handcuffs. The guy was in the back of my car. But because of the fact that we had good team members doing their job and we had a citizen that was able to provide accurate information, talking to a person, not a computer, okay, we were able to actually get the situation resolved. The information was faxed. The person was given a summons for the traffic violation, and they were able to go along their way. Now, that is my professional experience. Why can we not operate within those realms on a regular basis where we're trying to help resolve the issue versus just grab, and in some cases, not do it correctly, not just grab, but do it in a way that's demeaning. So when it comes to ICE, when it comes to immigration, do the job that you are able to do, legally speaking. Do it with respect, do it with the honor that you are supposed to, and understand that these individuals that are here that we're dealing with, they're people. And they're also people that are going to hopefully make our country better. And for the ones that obviously we have record of that are not vested in the United States as they can be, the legal justice system will do that job. Let the justice system handle that appropriately. So from a sheriff's standpoint, my stance is always going to be, if it's a righteous move within law, if it is a righteous move within enforcement, I am for it. If we start teetering on emotions, or we teeter on the concept of, well, they just don't belong because how they got here, let the criminal justice system handle it the right way. And I think we'll get we'll get more resolve. We'll get more positive outcomes, and there'll be less of a infight with right or wrong, because we should be doing it right. We should. And under my watch, we are going to do it right. And if anybody goes out of their realm intentionally, if you go out of your way to make people's lives miserable, I'm coming after you. And that's just it in a nutshell. We are not in the profession that we have the ability to go negatively towards people just because we have a position of power, because that's granted to us because people give us that opportunity. Hopefully that makes sense.
Absolutely. And we did have a case a while back of some officers kind of backdoor assisting ICE against Colorado law. If that happened in your department, we can assume, they would face the full force of the law on that.
Absolutely. You have to understand, that goes back to training. That really goes back to training. if you make a mistake is in fact that. If you are intentionally violating a state law for the purpose of putting your thumb, theoretically speaking, onto a person because of your belief that you're somehow fighting the greater cause, you're not. The people have spoken, they have voted, and they have voted intentionally because we have the judiciary process for the ability to look at each case by case versus a blanket. We can't look at it as a blanket. We have to look at it as each judge that's going to look at these cases, each judge that's going to go over these immigration issues. That's not within our power, nor should it. Our job is to really focus on El Paso County and really focus on making our county safer, more intelligent in the way that we arrest as well as we enforce, so that we have a better product for the citizens. Why am I justifying making arrests on individual when it costs upwards of 120 to 150, roughly speaking, to house an individual per day, when that is not something that I should be doing? And that goes in the financial, the fiscal responsibility. Like, there's so many different ways to look at it. Somebody does it wrong, they're going to have to pay the piper.
All right. And then this legislative session, we saw Governor Polis advocating for a new prison, either the building or the leasing of a new prison to house prisoners. And again, we already have one of the highest incarceration rates as a country. Is that necessary? And again, how do we already have some of these highest numbers. How do we bring those numbers down while maintaining safety for the community?
Right. So I'll give you what I foresee could be a fix. What we have is, going back to that educational aspect, is we have to look at the individuals that are struggling with drug abuse. They're struggling with literacy. They're struggling with violence, TBIs. They don't have the fully functioning ability of their facilities. They themselves as an individual struggle to operate within society. I think if we take more of a proactive approach versus, we need another building. I don't think we need more buildings. I think we need more resources. And I think we could better serve the community if housing an individual makes our community safer, then why aren't we building housing? If putting them in a place that has the ability to lock, why aren't we building a place for them to stay where they could lock the door? If their mental health is such a terrible thing, why do we not hire more mental health professionals that are available to help treat these individuals or provide treatment or guidance? If jobs, or they're hurting financially and they're committing robberies and burglaries and they're trespassing properties to commit crime, if financially that's their issue, why do not they have the literacy while they're in the jail or getting these programs started? Why are we not doing that while we're teaching them how far a dollar could go if you work for it? Why are we not providing these things? So I think that we have fixes out there, but they might be looking at it from an FTE standpoint, a full-time employee. We just have to switch the vision on how we're going to fix people, because it's not just the person that's on the street. Some people don't want to be housed. Like, they really don't. And so we can't look at it as grab them and throw them away. Some people need help. Let's be available for those ones. And let's really look at our criminal justice in perspective with the amount of individuals that are in jails and prisons. Let's curb that first by asking maybe them and the victims. Let's talk to the victims. What would the victims like to see if this person gets out of custody? Let's start there. And I think that if we do that, if everybody is lock the door, throw away the key, then maybe we need to reevaluate what our system is doing, because we have a lot of redeemable people. We have some that we cannot, but for those that do get out of custody, I think that investment starts early, and I think it needs to start with a more progressive approach.
All right. And finally, I want to talk about the militarization of police forces, especially since 9/11. We've seen, obviously, it's a dangerous field of work. You're dealing with people in heated situations. But I think what we've seen since, again, especially since 9/11, is police forces kind of, they get all this military equipment, whether it's these SWAT tanks, automatic rifles, things like that. How do we start to move away from that to make police a trusted community protection force instead of feeling like an occupying army?
Really, it comes back down to transparency and as to why. If you look at the history of law enforcement and where like special weapons and tactics came into play, there was a situation many, many years ago in Los Angeles where a individual was better equipped, had better weaponization on himself than the local police. And it was a very, very dangerous situation where a lot of people could have gotten hurt worse had there not been the numbers of officers versus this one assailant, this one bad guy who had armor. And at that time, police officers didn't even have armor on a regular basis. And I remember it was a big deal when I started. They're going to pay for our armor. Like the armor that we had was like that thick, 2-3 inches thick. And, gradually it's gotten to the point where it's a little bit more versatile. So I think it touches on two different things. Your question very specifically touches on two different things. How do we become more protectors? We have to change the mindset from just being the sheepdog is something that they utilize a lot, where we have the ability to fight and to protect and to do this. And we have to look at ourselves more from the standpoint of maybe the shepherd concept, where you're going to have a whole bunch of people and sometimes you got to use your tools to guide them in the right direction. But you need to not just have teeth. You need to not just have the heavy Bearcats and the equipment that is sometimes necessary for a barricaded subject that has hostages. You have to have the ability to get out in the community and know who your peace officers are that are good with community orientation and community settings. And we need to hire individuals that are able to open those doors of communication so that maybe we don't have as many individuals that are as fearful. And I think that if we look at it from a standpoint of the equipment we do need the equipment that we need to make sure that we prioritize is definitely the stuff that brings us together as a community. The protective gear we need. What we don't need is we don't need to invest so fully in that and negate the officer that could potentially prevent that. So I think that comes back to, education from the department. It comes back to education for the community. And that starts with the conversation. And that starts with proactively looking at each other as people. We need each other, and we need to stop looking at each other as an enemy or potential enemy. And we need to understand that there are some situations that are very difficult, and we have to use those tools. But for everything in between, let's put more of our focus and our emphasis on community engagement in a proper way to lower crime.
I love to hear it. Mateo, it has been fantastic. And if you could tell the folks where to find you and how they can support your campaign.
All right. So my name is Mateo Montoya Collis. You could find me on the website, MateoForSheriff.com. We'll update every week what we're doing, what we have going on. Funds are obviously something that would help. So if you have an extra dollar, throw it in the campaign. That helps a ton. Big picture, long term, we're going to bring positivity. We're going to bring a game plan that we know works. Education works, folks. We know that it's a no-brainer when it comes to lowering crime. Let's have one less victim in our county every day based on the education program. So.
Awesome. Well, it's great to see a progressive running for a law enforcement office. You have my full support, and I will follow your campaign and see how it goes. Thanks for coming on today.
Appreciate you, Mike. Thank you so much.
Have a good one.
Bye, brother.
Well, folks, looks like we're back at the barn and it's time to call it a day. I sure do appreciate you spending your time with me. If you want to help keep this podcast going by supporting me, you can get a paid subscription on Substack, where I'm Resistor Vic. Or if you're the type that'd rather go to PayPal, I'm also resistorvic@gmail.com. Thanks again.